everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to go over section 3 of the Doctrine and Covenants, part of an ongoing series that you can find on the playlist Doctrine and Covenants section by section. This one is going to be talking about the 116 pages that were lost during the translation of the Book of Mormon, and we're also going to talk about the Urim and Thummim, including looking at what the Temple Institute has to say about the Urim and Thummim, the People's Talmud, which is the website that Rabbi Gerfein set up. I want to see what it says there. And yeah, and that should be it. So section 3, Revelation given to Joseph Smith the prophet at Harmony, Pennsylvania, July 1828. One thing I should have done, let's look up Harmony, Pennsylvania. I want to try and keep track of the geography as we go through this. So Harmony, Pennsylvania, just outside of Pittsburgh. Looks like it's to the north, but not necessarily part of the metro area of modern day Pittsburgh, of course, and then not too far away from the Ohio border. And then Kirtland would just be up here. Kirtland is, I'm not sure if it's really part of, here it is right here. Here's Kirtland. So Harmony and then Kirtland just right over here. Okay. So anyway, okay, at Harmony, Pennsylvania, July 1828. 2 years before the church is founded in 1830, relating to the loss of 116 pages of manuscript translated from the first part of the Book of Mormon, which was called the Book of Lehi, which I know that all of us just wish that we could read that. It'd be amazing. The prophet had reluctantly allowed these pages to pass from his custody to that of Martin Harris, who had served for a brief period as scribe in the translation of the Book of Mormon. The revelation... So this revelation, Doctrine and Covenants 3, the revelation was given through the Urim and Thummim. Okay. The Lord's course is one eternal round. Joseph Smith must repent or lose the gift to translate. The Book of Mormon comes forth to save the seed of Lehi. Verse 1. The works and the designs and the purposes of God cannot be frustrated. Neither can they come to naught. This is such an important verse right here. The works and the designs and the purposes of God cannot be frustrated. So let's try not to be afraid of the powers that be and give them too much power in our minds. Why? Because God's works and designs cannot be frustrated. He's God. Let's have faith in God rather than faith in Satan's power. You know, it does exist, but so does God's power. For God doth not walk in crooked paths, neither doth he turn to the right hand, nor to the left, neither doth he vary from that which he hath said. Therefore his paths are straight, and his course is one eternal round. That's an interesting concept, one eternal round. And for me, it brings to mind the fact that he's above time, that all of time is before him. I don't know if this alludes to that. Let's click on the footnote. Nah, I'm not going to. Okay. Remember that it is not the work of God that is frustrated, but the work of men. For although a man may have revelations and have power to do many mighty works, yet if he boasts in his own strength and sets at naught the counsels of God and follows after the dictates of his own will and carnal desires, he must fall and incur the vengeance of a just God upon him. Again, this goes along with what I've been, what's been on my mind lately is the idealization of your own life, your idealization of the world, how things should be according to you, how everything should be normal according to you, or grandiose if you have a lot of pride, following after the dictates. That's a strong word, dictates. And that's essentially what we try and do. All of us, to one degree or another, we try and dictate how life is going to go instead of, and what we should do, hopefully most of us are flexible to reality and what God dictates in our lives. Using our agency, but when we come across things that interrupt our plans, be flexible and adapt. And then if you don't, it's going to be really hard for you. Behold, ye have been entrusted with these things, but how strict were your commandments? And remember also the promises which were made to you, if you did not transgress them. And behold, how oft, how oft you have transgressed the commandments and the laws of God, and have gone on in the persuasions of men. You know, even Joseph Smith, him being a human, we're all subject to peer pressure, people trying to manipulate us, and we can forgive him for that, obviously. He's probably better than any one of us. That's why he was chosen to be the prophet of this dispensation, but that's important right here, that we don't go back on what we've covenanted to do in God's commandments because of the persuasions of men. All right, verse 7, for behold, you should not have feared man more than God. Although men set at naught the counsels of God and despise his words, yet ye should have been faithful, and he would have extended his arm and support you against all the fiery darts of the adversary, and he would have been with you in every time of trouble. Behold, thou art Joseph, and thou wast chosen to do the work of the Lord, but because of transgression, if thou art not aware, thou wilt fall. But remember, God is merciful. Therefore repent of that which thou hast done, which is contrary to the commandment which I gave you, and thou art still chosen, and art again called to the work. Except thou do this, thou shalt be delivered up, and become as other men, and have no more gift. And I'm assuming that this is, when it says gift, that makes me think of the fact that he has the gift of being a seer, probably among other things. And when thou deliverest up that which God gave thee sight and power to translate, thou deliverest up that which was sacred into the hands of a wicked man. What's the footnote for man? D&C 10:6-8. Behold, they have sought to destroy you, yea, even the man in whom you have trusted has sought to destroy you. And for this cause I said that he is a wicked man, for he has sought to take away the things wherewith you have been entrusted, and he has also sought to destroy your gift. And because ye have delivered the writings into his hands, behold, wicked men have taken them from you. Okay. Verse 13, who has set at naught the counsels of God, and has broken the most sacred promises which were made before God, and has depended upon his own judgment, and boasted in his own wisdom. And this is the reason that thou hast lost thy privileges for a season. For thou hast suffered the counsel of thy director to be trampled upon from the beginning. Nevertheless, my work shall go forth, for insomuch as the knowledge of a Savior has come into the world through the testimony of the Jews, even so shall the knowledge of a Savior come unto my people, and to the Nephites, and the Jacobites, and the Josephites, and the Zoramites, through the testimony of their fathers. And this testimony shall come to the knowledge of the Lamanites, and the Lemuelites, and the Ishmaelites, who dwindled in unbelief because of the iniquity of their fathers, whom the Lord has suffered to destroy their brethren, the Nephites, because of their iniquities and their abominations. And for this very purpose are these plates preserved, which contain these records, and the promise of the Lord might be fulfilled, which he made to his people, in that the Lamanites might come to the knowledge of their fathers, and that they might know the promises of the Lord, and that they may believe the gospel and rely upon the merits of Jesus Christ, and be glorified through faith in his name, and that through their repentance they might be saved. Amen. Okay. Now let's hop over to the Institute Manual for Section 3. And what I've noticed with this manual, by the way, and I think this is how I'm going to do my videos, I'm going to do it based on the chapters in the manual, which each chapter, it seems that pretty much each chapter covers one section, except for a couple. Like, for example, here you have 15 through 16, but for the most part, it's like one chapter per section. So I'm going to try and be pretty vigorous with this and do one video a day of reading the scriptures, going through D&C, so it doesn't take forever, and so that after that we can move on to Isaiah. Okay, section 3, the works and the designs of God cannot be frustrated. Historical background. In the famous Wentworth letter, written in 1842, the prophet Joseph Smith proclaimed the power of the restored church. Quote, "No unhallowed hand can stop the work from progressing. Persecutions may rage, mobs may combine, armies may assemble, calumny may defame, but the truth of God will go forth boldly, nobly, and independent till it has penetrated every continent, visited every clime, swept every country, and sounded in every ear, till the purposes of God shall be accomplished, and the great Jehovah shall say the work is done." And by the way, if you're new to the channel, we've spent a good amount of time looking into this concept of the gospel going to every nation, kindred, and tongue. Has it happened? You'll have to go back probably about a month or two, but you can also go to my spreadsheet. Uh, and I have a bunch of quotes there when it comes to the gospel going to every nation, kindred, and tongue. Let's see. Kindred. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, right here on my quotes A through Z spreadsheet under missionary work, every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. You can find all these quotes. And I'm of the opinion, based on these quotes, that essentially that time, I think it's already essentially been fulfilled. We know that there's going to be missionary work done in the millennium. Anyway, I'm not going to go over all of it here, but it might be worth your time to check this out. Missionary work, every nation, kindred, tongue, and people on my spreadsheet, the tab called Quotes A through Z. Okay, 14 years earlier, in the summer of 1828, God had dramatically taught Joseph Smith that very lesson. The prophet wrote the details of the situation. Quote, "Sometime after Mr. Martin Harris had begun to write for me, he began to importune me to give him liberty to carry the writings home and show them, and desired of me that I would inquire of the Lord through the Urim and Thummim if he might not do so." Okay, so using the Urim and Thummim to receive an answer for this. And let's do this really quick. Martin Harris. I'm going to confess, I'm not the best with my early church history and who everybody was. So Martin Harris ended up being an apostle until 1837. Okay, so basically, he was a scribe to Joseph Smith, a Book of Mormon financier. He was one of the 3 witnesses to the gold plates. He went through some stuff, financial upset, and basically fell away from the church. But in the end, it says here that in 1870, at the age of 87, he moved to Utah territory and shortly afterward was rebaptized into the church. He was poor, and then he lived the last 4.5 years of his life with relatives in Cache Valley. He died on July 10th, 1875, and then he was buried there. Clarkston County, Utah Territory. Okay, sorry. So, kind of an interesting guy, and you can't really fault them too much, the members of the early church, because that must have been really hard. That was a time of great sacrifice and just a lot of testing. It was a brand new church. So I don't really judge him too harshly. Well, not at all. Okay. So Joseph Smith was going to get a revelation through the Urim and Thummim about this. And then he continues, "I did inquire, and the answer was that he must not. However, he was not satisfied with this answer and desired that I should inquire again. I did so, and the answer was as before. Still, he could not be contented, but insisted that I should inquire once more. After much solicitation, I again inquired of the Lord, and permission was granted him to have the writings on certain conditions, which were that he show them only to his brother, Preserved Harris." Again, that's a weird name. Preserved Harris. His own wife, his father and his mother, and a Mrs. Cobb. a sister to his wife. In accordance with the last answer, I required of him that he should bind himself in a covenant to me in a most solemn manner, that he would not do otherwise than had been directed. He did so. He bound himself as I required him, took the writings, and went his way. Notwithstanding, however, the great restrictions which he had been laid under, and the solemnity of the covenant which he had made with me, he did show them to others, and by stratagem they got them away from him, and they never have been recovered unto this day. In the meantime, while Martin Harris is gone with the writings, I went to visit my father's family at Manchester. So maybe we should just trust God, right? Maybe we should stop trying to impose our will on reality, hold on to our desires, idealizations, plans, schemes, whatever, and allow God to put limitations in our life, and then be flexible and obey, and then find other, go a different route, but give God priority. All right, continuing, his mother, Lucy Mack Smith, wrote about Joseph's arrival at their home in Manchester and of his anguish when he learned that Martin Harris had lost the manuscript. After a long delay, Martin showed up at the house and confessed that he could not find the papers. Oh, well, that's nice, Martin. Quote, Joseph, who had not expressed his fears till now, sprang from the table, exclaiming, Martin, have you lost that manuscript? Have you broken your oath and brought down condemnation upon my head as well as your own? Yes, it is gone, replied Martin, and I know not where. Oh my God, said Joseph, clenching his hands. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would be a little bit scared. All is lost. All is lost. What shall I do? I have sinned. It is I who tempted the wrath of God. I should have been satisfied with the first answer which I received from the Lord, for he told me that it was not safe to let the writing go out of my possession. He wept and groaned and walked the floor continually. At length he told Martin to go back and search again. No, said Martin, it is all in vain, for I have ripped open beds and pillows. I know it is not there. Then must I, said Joseph, return with such a tale as this? I dare not do it. And how shall I appear before the Lord? Of what rebuke am I not worthy from the angel of the Most High? The next morning he set out for home. We parted with heavy hearts, for it now appeared that all which we had so fondly anticipated, and which had been the source of so much secret gratification, had in a moment fled, and fled forever. It's from History of Joseph Smith, pages 128 to 129. Of subsequent events, the prophet wrote, quote, After my return home, I was walking out a little distance when, behold, the former heavenly messenger appeared and handed to me the Urim and Thummim again. For it had been taken from me in consequence of my having wearied the Lord in asking for the privilege of letting Martin Harris take the writings which he lost by transgression. And I inquired of the Lord through it and obtained D&C 3. So see, D&C 3, everything that we just read, this came through the Urim and Thummim. So this is interesting, and I'm not sure that I knew that or ever learned that as a consequence of this, the Urim and Thummim was taken from Joseph Smith. I don't know. I just love learning all these little details. I wish I could just remember everything, but we'll see if this one sticks in my mind. That's kind of crazy. So right here, let's stop really quick and let's take a look at the Urim and Thummim. So first, let's go to our own church and see what they say. This is under Gospel Topics. Urim and Thummim overview. An ancient instrument or tool prepared by God and used by Joseph Smith to aid in the translation of the Book of Mormon. God provided a Urim and Thummim to his prophets in ancient times. And then it says, see Exodus 28:30. So let's look at that. And thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim. And they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before the Lord. And Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. Of course, we know that Aaron was essentially the first high priest in Israel after the Exodus, right? Of course, Moses would have been one too. He had the Melchizedek priesthood, but Aaron, he's the one that started the priestly line of the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, that would be priests. Up until recent times when the priesthood has been opened up to the rest of Israel. But he was essentially, as far as like the Jews are concerned, the first high priest of Israel, acting as such in the tabernacle. So it's talking about him, and here's a visual. This isn't necessarily Aaron, but this is how the high priest dressed, and here's the breastplate right here. Okay, let's see what it says in 1 Samuel 28:6. And when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets. So here it's just using the first part of the name, Urim and Thummim. So, yeah, Saul had gone crazy and mad with rage. Okay, and then Ezra. So this would be after the Babylonian captivity. Ezra 2, verse 63. And the Tirshatha said unto them that they should not eat of the most holy things till there stood up a priest with Urim and with Thummim. Okay, so ancient prophets had the Urim and Thummim. It seems more especially the high priest of Israel. I'm not so sure about prior to that. Let's see what it says in Ether. So this is in the Book of Mormon, of course, chapter 3, verses 23 through 24, and verse 28. And behold, these two stones will I give unto thee, and ye shall seal them up also with the things which ye shall write. Oh, this is, okay, but this isn't the story of the Jaredites. This is talking to Moroni. Okay, so that's just one thing, and then it has a bunch of other things that you can read here. Hopefully you already knew before this point what the Urim and Thummim was. Here's Moroni bearing the plates along with the Urim and Thummim, sort of Laban, so forth. If we go to the Temple Institute, this is the group that has constructed all the things. They've created all the vessels for the temple, including the breastplate for the high priest. In fact, you can, let's see, let me go here. In case you didn't know, a lot of like evangelical Christians are really excited about the Temple Institute because a lot of them figure that they're going to be the ones that create the third temple. If you go to study tools, vessels, and then down to gallery, you can see all the things that they've prepared. And here you have it. In fact, let's look at this one. So here you have shoulder stones, onyx stones, and then you have the rest of this stuff, and then you have the breastplate with the 12 gemstones, right? And I've done a video about this before, by the way. Here you can get like a more detailed description. Ruby. Now this is based on their own research, but they're thinking that ruby would have been what represented Reuben, emerald for Simeon, agate, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, agate for Levi, so on and so forth, right? Okay, so with that being said, let's just read some of this. And you shall place the Urim V'Tummim, so like in Hebrew it'd be like Urim V'Tummim, Urim V'Tummim, in the breastplate of judgment, that shall be over Aaron's heart when he comes before God. And then it says here, the Urim V'Tummim is the name of God. This is according to Judaism. So I haven't seen anywhere that this is our doctrine, but this is what they believe. The Urim and Thummim was the famed oracle-like aspect, zoom in, of the breastplate by which a heavenly answer was received for important questions. According to most authoritative opinions, the expression Urim V'Tummim actually refers to the breastplate itself, not to the mystical divine name of God, which was written on a piece of parchment and inserted into a flap of the garment. The presence of the name facilitated the reception of divine guidance through the shining of specific letters on the stones. So the Jews have an idea of how this worked and operated, and who knows, maybe they're right, maybe they're not. Our church, I don't believe there's much information about how this actually operated. There is this, if you go to the Wikipedia article, you have this Urim and Thummim, and it seems that this is maybe different than what would have been used by the high priest. Here's like it says an artistic depiction of interpreters based on J.W. Peterson's influential 1921 recollection of an 1890 interview with Joseph Smith's brother William. So you have this, which obviously it doesn't have the 12 gemstones. It has the 2 stones up here, put into spectacles, so to speak, right? So it's different, but it seems that they operated the same. And these 2 stones right here, I'm not sure if that's the equivalent of what we were looking at before, the 2 stones that go up on the shoulders over here. But anyway, it seems that the Jews believe, like you see the names of the tribes of Israel, that certain letters, I guess, would light up, right? Divine guidance through the shining of specific letters on the stones. See? All right. The identity, and I want to say, I forgot. I think that if I remember from my study right, this contains all the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. I'd have to go back and research that, but I think that would make sense as far as how they thought that this worked. Like all 22 letters would need to be present in order for divine instruction to be received and without missing letters. Okay, anyway. The identity of God is the source of creation. What does this mean? What are the implications of this fact? The knowledge that it is the name of God itself which brought about the illumination of the Urim and Thummim. This is indeed a lofty concept, but one whose lesson can be readily appreciated, at least on a simple level of understanding. God is the creator of all existence. His power is unlimited. He has no form whatsoever, according to Judaism. Neither has beginning or end. He is the supreme being. He is perfect in absolute unity, and he is also totally unknowable, according to Judaism. Yet in numerous passages throughout the Torah, we are commanded to know God. In all of your ways, know him. Proverbs 3:6. And I shall betroth you in faith, and ye shall know Hashem. That's like a stand-in word, essentially. It's like saying the Lord, but literally, my understanding is that it's the name. Instead of saying Jehovah or in Hebrew Yahweh, you say the name. That's Hosea 2:22, are but 2 examples of many such instances. Truly, how can we come to know God, who is omnipotent and infinite? Yet we are commanded, and therefore expected, to do just that. And there is a general rule with regard to the Torah's commandments. The Holy One never makes unfair demands on a person. Knowledge of God through his names. The sages of Israel teach that one way to know God is through awareness of his relationship to the universe, which he created. Although it is taught that, quote, no thought can grasp him at all, that's from the Zohar, and ultimately God's essence is not only unknowable, but unnameable. As well, still God's names describe his relationship with creation. Through these attributes of divine interaction, we can at least attempt some glimpse of his greatness according to our limited intellect. There are a number of names used throughout the Bible. One denotes the attribute of divine mercy, another the aspect of strict judgment, and so on. These divine names of God are merely appellations which he has entitled us to use. They're not his true identity, which is beyond the reach of human knowledge. But it was through these names that God created heaven and earth, and it is by way of his names that he continues to direct every minute aspect of existence. Thus, it is obvious that God's names, through which he summoned forth all creation from nothing at all, have great power. This power is the secret behind the prophetic revelation of the Urim and Thummim. So I mean, that's according to Judaism. From the time of Moshe or Moses, the Urim and Thummim is unlike any other aspect of the priestly garments, for it was not created by those skilled artisans who fashioned the other items, aided by their understanding and inspiration, and it was not created from the donations or contributions of Israel, as were all other appointments to the temple. The entire matter is one of those mysteries which was handed down to Moses at Mount Sinai by God himself, and its secret was transmitted orally down through the generations. At the time of the original tabernacle, erected in the desert, Moses took the original Urim and Thummim, written in sublime holiness, and placed it inside the breastplate of judgment after Aaron donned the ephod. This is reflected by the verse Leviticus 8:7, and he put the ephod upon him, and he fastened him with the belt of the ephod, and he put the breastplate upon him, and into the breastplate he put the Urim and Thummim. So it's like in the breastplate. I don't know. Only questions of congregational importance. The process of questioning for divine aid with the Urim and Thummim was done in the following manner. When a question arose whose implications were so consequential that the entire congregation of Israel would be affected, such as, for example, the question of whether or not to go out to war, then the king of Israel or the commanding officer of the army would ask his question before the high priest. An ordinary person or someone not representing the entire community would not ask of the Urim and Thummim. The high priest stands facing the Ark of the Testimony, and the questioner stands behind him, facing the Cohen's back. So Cohen, that's the name for priest. So facing the high priest's back. Uh, in Hebrew, it's Cohen Gadol. Sorry. But anyway, the questioner does not speak out loud. Neither does he merely think the question in his heart. He poses this query quietly to himself, like someone who prays quietly before his creator. For example, he will ask, "Shall I go out to battle, or shall I not go out?" A meditative experience and a prophetic revelation. The high priest is immediately enveloped by the spirit of divine inspiration. He gazes at the breastplate by meditating upon the holy names of God. The Cohen, the priest, was able to receive the answer through a prophetic vision. The letters on the stones of the breastplate which would shine forth in his eyes in a special manner, spelling out the answer to the question. The priest then informs the questioner of the answer. Flavius Josephus, Josephus, he's the historian, writes in Antiquities 389 that the stones also shone brilliantly when Israel went forth into battle. This was considered as an auspicious sign for their victory. Another midrashic passage indicates that when the tribes of Israel found favor in God's eyes, each respective stone shone brightly or brilliantly. Now that's interesting because that's similar to, in a way, that's kind of similar to the Liahona. That the Liahona worked when Lehi and his family were in God's favor, when they were living righteously. That's when the Liahona would work. And you have to wonder how similar in operation the Liahona was to the Urim and Thummim. It's an interesting thing. They're two different things, right? So that's why we have two different words for them. They're not the same thing. The Liahona was more like a handheld device, but it seems like it had a very similar function in some way. There would be letters that would appear on the Liahona. So Maybe if that's how the Liahona works, then maybe that's how the Urim and Thummim works. Maybe the Jews are right. I don't know. But anyway, but when particular members of any one tribe were involved in a transgression, that tribe's stone would appear tarnished and dimmed. The high priest would see this phenomena and understand its cause. He would then cast lots within the rank of this tribe until the guilty person was revealed and judged. What is the meaning of the words Urim or Urim V'Tummim? According to the commentary of the famed Rashi, that's one of the Jewish sages of the Middle Ages, these words are derived from their Hebrew roots for lights and perfections. Lights and perfections. Since through the Urim and Thummim the question is illuminated through the letters and its subject matter is then perfected by the high priest. The Talmud also indicates that the message was received, indicates that the message which was received was called Tummim, perfect, because it was immutable. So that's very interesting, isn't it? And then let me just read one thing from the People's Talmud. This is Rabbi Gerfein's website. Jerusalem Temple, vessels. And this is found in the Talmud. This is like his explaining the Talmud to the layperson. So this is based on Yoma 73 Alpha, the original computer of thousands of years ago. From the biblical days of Aaron HaKohen, or HaKohen, the priest, Aaron the priest, and for hundreds of years onwards into the days of the Jerusalem temple, the high priest would wear on his chest a breastplate known as the Urim and Thummim. This magical item had, among other properties, 12 different gems and stones that sat upon the names of the 12 tribes. The Talmud teaches how they would use the Urim and Thummim to ask questions and receive answers from the way the various stones would light up and in what order. And on the next page, the Talmud says that these messages were so powerful that even though the words of a prophet could be, that these messages were so powerful that even though the words of a prophet could be nullified, the decree of the Urim and Thummim could not be. The Talmud says that the name Urim is a play on the Hebrew word for light, to suggest that the breastplate enlightened the sages' words, and Tumim as a play on the Hebrew word suggesting to complete or fulfill its words. Tom. So or in Tom. Yoim in Tumim. The I am is like the plural. Like that's what you add onto a word to make it plural. Either I am or OT. Okay, so with that said, and I think it's good that we went through that. Is it doctrine that that's how it worked? No, it's according to our church, no. But does it go against doctrine? No. It's just one of those things that maybe they do know. Maybe they have a recollection of exactly how it worked. And again, I think it's significant that it sounds like it maybe kind of worked, and in a way, it's just a slight resemblance. It kind of worked the same way that the Liahona worked. Okay. So let's go to the notes and commentary for section 3, verses 1 through 2. In what way is God's course one eternal round? This is from Bruce R. McConkie, Mormon Doctrine. God governs by law, wholly, completely, invariingly, and always. He has ordained that identical results always flow from the same causes. There is no respect of persons with him, and he is a being with whom in whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. Hence, the Lord's course is one eternal round, the same today as yesterday and forever. Yeah, so maybe not exactly what I was thinking with kind of being above time, but maybe a little bit, because again, when you go through the temple, you take a certain course. You go from, it depends on the temple, but basically it's like you're traveling, and then you reach this center spot, which is the celestial room, and it's like that's when your journey ends. And of course, there's like more that happens in the eternities, but in a sense, it's like at that point you're above everything. You've overcome the world. Symbolically, uh, I mean, we will enter God's presence one day if you live righteously, and then you'll be just like Him, and you'll be above time, and you'll have the same values, which is the gospel, the values of the gospel. It'll be like that forever. I think some people get confused when it comes to no variableness because they see changes in the church, changes to programs or methods or whatever, and they're looking at it as though the way that things are enacted also have to always be the same, and that's not true. There's certain core values that never change. There's core things that never change. But based on circumstances here on earth, in one situation, the way that those core values would manifest the proper way or be enacted the proper way changes based on the circumstances, but it doesn't change the actual core truths. So sometimes people get all confused by that, but if you just understand that there's core truths in that we have a changing world, um, hopefully it makes sense. It makes sense to me. Verse 3, why is it that the works neither of man nor of Satan can thwart the designs of God? Hopefully that doesn't really need an answer in your mind, but President Joseph Fielding Smith answered this question in terms of God's perfect knowledge. Quote, in his infinite wisdom, our Father has provided for every problem or difficulty that may arise to stop or hinder the progress of his work. No power on earth or in hell can overthrow or defeat that which God has decreed. Every plan of the adversary will fail, for the Lord knows the secret thoughts of men and sees the future with a vision clear and perfect, even as though it were in the past. Jacob, son of Lehi, in his rejoicing declared, oh, how great the holiness of our God, for he knoweth all things, and there is not anything save he knows it. He knew that Satan would try to frustrate the coming forth of the Book of Mormon by stealing and changing of the manuscript, and provided for it hundreds of years before the birth of Jesus Christ. I'll bet that we'll be amazed after this life when we can see God's plan and if we're privy to just everything that's happened. Which it seems that we will be, at least in the millennium. The scriptures say that all things will be revealed, everything that's been going on this earth, and we'll see all the different things that God has done, or maybe at least a good part of them, and we'll realize just like how in control He actually is. Which again should just be a given. Pretty much, I think the whole world realizes that. Anyone that's part of a monotheistic faith, and especially Abrahamic faith. But anyway, okay, verse 5, what strict commandments and what promises were given to Joseph? This verse refers in part to Joseph Smith's first interview with Moroni and the cautions and promises made to him. That's in Joseph Smith history. I'm not going to read through all that, but that's where you can find that. 6 through 8, you should not have feared man more than God. The prophet Joseph Smith transgressed the commandments and laws of God because he feared man more than he feared God. Joseph's fear was not that of a coward, but was more probably caused by the fact that he was only a youth and was inexperienced. Yeah, for sure. In the case of Martin Harris, Joseph was dealing with a man over 23 years his senior, a prominent and wealthy farmer, and one of the few who believed Joseph's story and supported him with both money and labor. There would have been tremendous inner pressure for Joseph to want to show his appreciation to Martin Harris. Quote, his faith in God was absolutely firm, but he lacked experience in trusting his untried friend in his constant pleadings. And I feel like there's a lesson there. It doesn't, yeah, you can understand what that would be like. You're young, you have this older guy, he's helping you. But even under those circumstances, you can't cave in. You have to have integrity, and it's hard, but that's what we got to do. and God will support you as you do that. 12 through 14, in what sense was Martin Harris a wicked man? Quote, this is from Smith and Sodal commentary. Martin Harris was wicked in persisting to ask for what God at first refused to grant. He was wicked in not keeping the sacred pledge to guard the manuscript. But otherwise, he was not a wicked man, as that term is generally understood. A father will sometimes call his boy wicked, meaning disobedient, for the time being. The Lord, that's the end of the commentary. And then it says, the Lord clarified the term in verse 13. He gave 4 reasons why Martin Harris was wicked. Okay. 16 through 20. Nevertheless, my work shall go forth. President Joseph Fielding Smith explained the significance of this prophecy and its fulfillment. Quote, Joseph Smith, in his own strength, would scarcely have dared to predict to a bitterly hostile world that no power could stay this work and that it would go forth as a witness to all the world. The Lord has decreed that this work would be established. He called it a marvelous work and a wonder, even before the organization of the church. If Joseph Smith had been guilty of practicing a fraud, if he had endeavored to palm off the Book of Mormon on this hostile, unbelieving world, he never would have dared to say that it would go forth to the convincing of Jew and Gentile that Jesus is the Christ. Even if he had been foolish enough to make such a declaration, and the work being spurious, it would have come to a speedy and ridiculous end. It never would have survived the first year of its existence. It would have been so filled with flaws that the scrutinizing gaze of the world would have exposed it in all of its folly. The truth remains that after the thousands of attacks and scores of books that have been published, not one criticism or attack has survived, and thousands have borne witness that the Lord has revealed to them the truth of this marvelous work. Verses 17 through 20. Are there Nephites, Jacobites, Josephites, and Zoramites in the land of America today? Or are there only Lamanites? That's interesting because I was actually wondering that question as we were reading it. Would the Lord still keep some kind of like genealogy? I mean, is it just sufficient to say that they're from the house of Joseph and that they're mostly from Manasseh? I don't know. Does it have to be subdivided? Okay, so it says, it is commonly believed that there are no more Nephites because that nation was completely destroyed by the Lamanites about 400 AD. However, Nephites dissented to the Lamanites repeatedly before the appearance of Christ. In Captain Moroni's time, the descendants of these dissenters were almost as numerous as the Nephites. When the Savior visited the people of the Book of Mormon, all were united as children of Christ, and there were no Nephites or Lamanites. When they grew wicked again, they divided into groups called Lamanites and Nephites, only this time the division was not according to descent, but according to righteousness. The Nephites were those who wanted to live the commandments of God, and the Lamanites were those who did not. Other Nephites joined the Lamanites during the last great battle. See Mormon 6:15. I guess I'll just read that really quick. And it came to pass that there were 10 more who did fall by the sword, with their 10,000 each. Yea, even all my people, save it were those 24 who were with me, and also a few who had escaped into the south countries, and a few who had deserted over unto the Lamanites. So see, some that went south and some who deserted. So, and I've been aware of that for quite some time, but I'm going to show you one more thing before we end up in this. Other Nephites joined the Lamanites during the last great battle. D&C 3 verses 16 through 18 shows that descendants of Nephi, Jacob, Joseph, and Zoram can be found among Native Americans today. And the last thing that I want to share is if we go back here to my quotes A through Z, and we go down to Polynesians. I did a video about this a couple times, but I have let's see, right here. Right now it's under row 57, but that'll change as I add more things to the spreadsheet. There are there's a whole plethora of quotes from prophets, apostles, that say that Polynesians are descended from Nephites. So they talk about what are they called? The Maori in New Zealand, the Hawaiians. So just for example, let's look at a couple of these. So for example, here we go. David O. McKay, dedicatory prayer delivered by President McKay at the New Zealand Temple in the Church News. We express gratitude that to these fertile islands thou didst guide descendants of Father Lehi and has enabled them to prosper. Let's go to Spencer W. Kimball. This is official report of the Samoa Area Conference held in Pago Pago in Apia, Samoa, 1977. Spencer W. Kimball, quoting Joseph Fielding Smith, says, I would like to say to you, brethren and sisters from New Zealand, you are some of Hagoth's people, and there is no perhaps about it. And remember, Hagoth in the Book of Mormon, he was a Nephite. He didn't want any arguments about it. That was definite. So you are of Israel. You've been scattered. You are now you're being gathered. Over here, who's this from? George Reynolds in the Journal of Discourses. He talks about the Maori as well as the Hawaiians. Yeah, so anyway, you can spend time or just search that video. Just do a search on my channel for Polynesians. And there's a lot to say that they're part of this same family, Lehi's family, but specifically the Nephites, and more specifically than that, Hagoth, who traveled with a group of people, and it appears that they became the Polynesians. And they probably mixed in with native people there, just as what seems to have happened in South America. There's a lot to suggest that Lehi and his family, through time, their descendants mixed in with other populations that were in the Americas. So it's all very interesting. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.